hope you're all well. I'm just going to wait a second and just make sure there's people watching before I get started. I've got it all up ready so I can see all my comments as well, because sometimes Facebook doesn't always like us seeing the comments when we go live. So let me just bear with and see if anyone is on. Oh, Rosie, perfect. Good to see you. Rosie, can you just let me know? Can you hear me all okay? And can you see me all fine? So I don't want to record it all and realise the sound's not being good. I'll wait for you for a second. I'm going to upload this bit here. Oh, thumbs up. Perfect. That's great. And there's 4 people watching, which is perfect. Okay, well, I'm going to go straight into it. I'm going to go straight into going through the live for today. So, oh, thanks, Rosie. That's great. So, I'm Lauren. I'm here today. I'm from Lead with Lauren, and I'm here on the APBC Facebook page because I wanted to talk about getting your dogs prepared for life after lockdown and trying to get them feeling much better about being home alone, so they're not worried about coming out of this unprecedented time that none of us have ever seen happen. Obviously, we've got to try and make sure our dogs are feeling good about it all as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk through a few things, a few easy tips or things to think about when you're coming out of lockdown with your dog. But this is going to be a Q&A, so obviously it's led by you. So if you've got any questions at any point, just put them up. Please do put them up because I'm here to help you and to answer any questions. Obviously, I can't give really detailed sort of clinical support because I don't know the dog and I can't diagnose anything, but if you've got a problem, then I can give you a kind of general overview and of course direct you over to anyone that might be able to help you as well. So yeah, definitely put some questions up and so I can get to them. I'm going to go straight into it. So I'm going to talk about separation problems. I think we've already actually had a Q&A with an expert on separation, which has been a really good one. So if you've got, so you can go back to that to get another overview as well. And I want to kind of really focus on the lockdown with this one. So obviously I've said unprecedented. If you're anything like most of the people in the UK, you're going to have maybe been furloughed or you've been working from home, and it means you're going to have been with your dog for quite a long time. So you're going to be spending quite a long time with them, doing different things, completely different routines. So obviously when we go back to having to go back to work, it's going to be quite stressful for them, for some dogs. And what I want you to think about is it's not, so if your dog has already had a separation problem and you know that historically they've never really liked being left, but you've always been able to kind of get them through it and they've always managed to cope, then these are the dogs that are a little bit in the danger zone, because what you might find is that they start to really go backwards because they've had this period of being with you, and when you start to suddenly go back to work 9 till 5 with the dog walker in the middle of the day, they might just find it really hard to cope with. So the dogs that are in danger zones are ones that have just been able to cope. Obviously, if you've got a dog that's already had a separation problem, even if you've worked through it, this is a time where it might suddenly come back or it might suddenly reignite. So I'd make sure if you've got a dog and you know you've been working through it, and unfortunately this has happened at this time, well, unfortunately, but actually fortunately for some people, because part of separation is not leaving your dog, so actually it could be quite a good thing. But you've got those dogs as well that have already got a problem. But I also want you to think about, if you're watching this and you're like, well, actually my dog has never had a problem, that's great. And what you might find is that you just want to be careful. You just want to be mindful. You just want to have a few things that you're able to look out for as well. So how do you know if your dog's got a problem? So what I want you to think about is, if you're at home, does your dog, first of all, do they follow you around everywhere? So do they try and follow you around the house? Are they the classic dog that doesn't like you to go to the bathroom without being with you, or they wait outside every door that you go to, or it might not be they follow you around, but they follow a member of the family around? So have you noticed they're following around? And has that changed since lockdown? Is that something they're doing more of? Have they got more access to places in the house? And yeah, how often are they doing it and how much access have they got? Because if you find they're following you around a lot, it doesn't mean they've got a separation problem. So just because they follow you, dogs do like to be with us. So I'm not going to say your dog's got a separation problem if they follow you, but it can be something to just think about. If they get used to being with you all the time and then you're suddenly like, okay, I've got to go to work, bye, it makes it much more tricky. So I would definitely look at that as the first one. And not just following you around, but I'd also look at what happens if they don't have access to you. So some dogs follow you around and actually they're okay, that if they can go into the garden and the door's open, they're fine, they go out into the garden. But what happens if you actually shut the door, if they haven't got access to you? I think looking at that access is something to look at. So they can't physically get to you. What happens then? Because I think that's something people think, well, they choose to go off, so they haven't got a separation problem. But again, it's that choice of whether they've got access. So I would look at what happens is, not only do they follow you around, but what do they do when you shut the door as well? Also, what I want you to think about is, I get a lot of people that say, oh, my dog's not got a separation problem, but actually they bark when we leave the house, or they bark when I put them in their crate, or when I put them in their pen. And I think that's maybe a signal. For me, I would always say that's something I would definitely look into, because I think if a dog's barking, it might not be because they're anxious. Separation problem, that's why we call it separation problems. It covers lots of different things. But if you find that they start to bark whenever you go, some people go, oh well, that's just what dogs do, but actually I would say, well, I would probably want to work on that. I wouldn't want my dog left barking. I've had a few thumbs up for that, so I think a few people have noticed this as well. So yeah, that's something I would start to look at. And again, it's a bit, obviously we're in the UK, you might not be watching it, you might be watching it in a different country, but you know, our lockdown is easing, and it means that we are able to go out and about more. So it might be now that you're starting to realise, oh, there might be a problem. So that's why we're doing this now. So there are things to look out for when you leave, and also when you return. If you find your dogs barking, if you can hear them barking when you come back, then again, have they been a little bit anxious, or have they been, you know, has there been a problem when you've not been there? And again, and neighbours sometimes give us a little bit of help as well. So looking at exactly what they're doing when you're not there can be really useful. And again, on the flip side, just because they don't bark when you leave doesn't mean that then they're feeling great when you're there. So just because you leave and you're like, well, they haven't been barking, they still could be a problem if you come back to like a toilet issue, if they've messed on the floor, or if they've ripped something up, or, you know, if they've done something out of the ordinary, it could be a separation issue. So just make sure you check into it there. I'm just going to check if anyone's had any questions, because I've had a few pop up. No, that's fine. Pop your questions below. If anyone's watching this has got a dog with separation problem, put your questions below. Another thing to look out for, do they go absolutely crazy when you come back? So are they like absolutely mad, and has that changed? So again, if a dog goes crazy when you come in, dogs love seeing us, so they're not going to, you know, just acknowledge us, you know, with no excitement at all. But what you might find is if your dog used to get excited but it's really ramped up, it could be that there's something going on there. So these are all these little clues that I just want you to look out and just think, okay, what can it be, and could they have a separation problem, you know, after lockdown? So and do they seem to be very attached to one person? That was the last thing I wanted to talk about. So it's not just, separation problem isn't just dogs not liking being alone, but it can be they get very attached. So it could be that you've been at home, you've been working from home, and you've been spending loads of time with your dog, and all the rest of the family have been out and about, and that dog's actually starting to get worried about whenever you leave the room. So it's not just that they don't want to be left alone, but it's actually when you leave the room they start to get worried, even if other members of the family are in the room as well. Hi Claire. So yeah, so that could be another thing, if they're very attached to one particular person, and if that seems more, it might be that they are anyway, but again, if it seems more apparent, you're thinking, well, why are they crying when he's just left the room? I'm here. Then that might be a separation problem as well. So I just want to give you a little schedule of things that you can do to try and work through this and try and prepare yourself as well. So first of all, it's really tricky. I've had people on the phone being like, I don't know when I'm going back to work. And what's really tricky is some places are going, you've got to go back on Monday, or you've got to go, you know, it's really hard. It is hard, but as much as you can, if you can plan as much as you can to get a schedule in place before you go back to work, then that's going to help loads. So it might be that work have said something, and you know that you're going to be out of the house, you know, at least 4 hours when you go back. Then I would say, okay, well, what we need to start building for is 4 hours. So I would start to schedule it and work. When you're looking at a timeline, it's better to think that it's sooner than it is, because obviously if you think, oh, I might have to go back to work in 3 weeks time, and actually it doesn't happen for 6 weeks, it just means that you've put that preparation in now. So just get a schedule together. What I also want you to think about as well is, if you've got a dog with a separation problem, you don't really want to be leaving them. So you don't want to suddenly you say, oh, I'm going to leave them and they're going to bark. So whenever I work with people, and I'm sure it's the same if anyone is working as a behaviourist, I basically say, really, you don't want to be leaving this dog. And it doesn't mean you don't leave the house. Obviously, you can think of other ways, you know, get people involved. But if you know your dog's starting to show separation signs and you're going to go back to work soon, you really need to start speaking to family and friends and people that can come in and just create a little network for you, because it's going to be an absolute nightmare if you just go back and you just leave them. So I would look at that schedule, but I'm also looking at your network as well and who you can bring in too, and get people to just step in. If you're struggling, people will help. there are a lot of people working from home, and I know in my family a lot of people are still working from home, and it will go on for a while. So now is kind of the time that you can really work on it actually with separation. So feel, you know, it's a good thing because you can get people to help you, but just have that in mind and put that into place now as well. I would also look to start getting your dog used to not being in the house with you. So basically when you start a separation, you start at the point that they can cope. And for some dogs, they can only cope if they're in the same room with you and they're 3 foot away from you. And if they're further away from you, if you get up and walk away, they don't like it. And if that's the case, you work on that level and you build it up slowly from there. And that's the most basic thing I can say about separation is you work at what level your dog can cope with and you build it up very, very, very slowly. Hi, Jessie. So that's what you want to think of is what are they like in the house and where can you start with your dog? And it might be, okay, well, they can cope in, you know, across the room from you, but as soon as you leave the room they want to follow you. And if that's the case, can you work on them not following you out of that house? So you're just going to take it right back to basics at the point, and at the point when I say they can cope, it's that they're able to rest, they're able to go to sleep, you know, they aren't trying to follow you whenever you look, they're not staring at you, what are you doing next, I need to follow you, you know, they're genuinely resting. So that's what I'm talking about when they're coping as well. So look at what I want you to do is think about, right, we have to start this at home. And we're going to start at this level because I know my dog is comfortable being that far away from me. And that's all you need to do. Well, I say all you need to do. It is a bit more complex than that, but that's basically what will get you to start. The mistake a lot of people make is they think that they need to leave their dog and they need to start getting their dog used to being out of the house. So what they're going to do, and I've heard loads of people do this, and it's not, if you've done this, it's really common, and I can see how you would do it, is they go, right, I'm going to start leaving the house, so we're going to go out for 20 minutes and get my dog used to it. And that 20 minutes is just too long because their dog's not been used to it. So you need to start in the house. I've just had a comment come in. So let me see if it's going to let me open the whole thing. I'll come back to you. I'm going to get it up on my laptop because sometimes it doesn't always come up. I'll come back to you with the comment. I'll just finish what I was saying and then I'll get it up. So yeah, don't think that separation is about leaving the house, because actually it's about being in the house and building it from there. So lots of people start because they leave and actually it all starts before then. So I want you to start doing that. I also want you to look at starting to build independence as well. So sorry, I'm just going to try and get this comment up before I go. Oh, there we go. So I want you to start looking at building independence. I'm going to go onto this comment and then I will come back to that bit. So there are 2 of us in the household. If either of us leave, the dog will stand and stare at the front door. She doesn't settle if we're both at home. Can dogs only relax when all family members are present? And this has only come about since lockdown. So she can tolerate about 20 to 30 minutes and we can work around that. So it sounds great. It sounds like you're doing some really nice work on her as well. I would say if it's really, what you need to know is what's normal for your dog. So some dogs give loads of signals and you know that they're not comfortable and they're, you know, as soon as someone gets up, they're panting and they're pacing and they're vocalizing, they're feeling distressed. And some dogs don't really show that distress in that way, but they're showing their stress in other ways. So it does sound like from your dog, if it's only when you leave, and if she's standing and staring at the door and she won't relax, then she's not feeling that relaxed. So there's probably something going on there. She's probably, whatever she's feeling, it's not her normal sequence of behaviour. So I wouldn't say that dogs can only relax when all family members are present. I would say that actually dogs should be able to relax, you know, whoever is present. They should. What we want is dogs that actually, when people leave the house, they can cope and they can relax with that. So I would probably say that you're doing the right thing. It sounds like you're aware of it and it sounds like you're working on it. But if you've built up to 20 to 30 minutes, that's really good. So that's great. I would maybe with her start to look at how you can try and make her feel more settled in general when someone goes, and maybe start to look at it. Does she do it if someone goes into another room? Actually, you can write in the comments actually. If someone just gets up and goes into the kitchen, where are they gone? Are they not all in? And if she's like that, I would start to teach her, okay, I want to teach you to settle here while that person goes in and out of the kitchen. So if it's only the front door, then you might want to do a few really small in and outs of the front door while she's doing something really nice. So it's not like a chew or something that she can enjoy. So she's not thinking, oh, someone's leaving, so I've got to watch and follow where they're going. So so to summarise, sorry, I feel like I've given you a lot. But yeah, basically, if it's not normal for her, and if it's not normal for her, then it might be that she's feeling stressed or some sort of emotion around it. If that's the case, then what I would do is I would look at what she does within the home. So when one of you or your partner get up and leave and go into a different room, if she's completely relaxed with that, but she's not with the front door, then it might be a front door issue, and I would start working on going out and coming in and giving her something nice to do. Hopefully that helps. Yeah, she sometimes runs around the house to check the other person hasn't left the house. Oh, bless her, she sounds really sweet. She sounds lovely. So I would probably say she's a little bit unsettled when people are moving around. So I would start to maybe teach her some nice so I'll go on to this anyway. I was going to talk about independence kind of behaviours, and that's basically teaching dogs to go and do something that doesn't always need our input all of the time. So it can be something as simple as you teach them to have a chew on their bed and not be sat right next to you. So you say, okay, you can have your chew, you can sit over there, you can come over to me if you want to, but actually, you know, I want you to be quite independent with it, or give a puzzle toy or something that's just going to teach her to be further away from you. And while she's doing that, what you can start doing is you can start to I would start to teach her just distance first, actually. I would literally just teach her, go over there and chew, and not be right close to me. And I would do this for all dogs. If anyone is thinking, oh, I don't really know how to teach my dog not to be away from me, or to be away from me in the house, I would start to teach them that kind of independence work of doing something away from you within the house. And I would start to, and with your dog, what I would start to do is maybe look at, is it only when they go out of view? So if someone goes into the kitchen but she can see them, is she all right? Is it literally when they go out of view? And if it's when they go out of view, then I would start to maybe do really short little, you go out of view and then you come back in and then you reward her. So you're basically going to work on whenever she starts to do that alert, I don't know why I'm acting it out, I assume that's what she's doing, but whenever she starts to do that alert kind of looking, then you know that's the point that she's starting to get worried, and you know you can start working on that. And by working on that, you just make it you break it down lots, and you reward her and you make her feel good when you start doing it. So that's what I'd want to start doing with them as well. So independence work is basically giving them something to do that's away from you, making them feel good about doing that, and then you can start to leave and come back and leave and come back. But you want to make sure you do it without them going, what are you doing? And stopping what they're doing. So independence work, scent work is really good for this, actually. So teaching them, a lot of dogs, I'll teach them to go and find things. So I'll hide food, usually food, because it's the easiest thing to work with, but hide food somewhere and send them, go and find it. So they're going away from you to go and do it, rather than it all being focused around you. That can be really good. I do that with a lot of just puppies and just dogs in general. It's just confidence boosting, but it's nice because it boosts their confidence when they're not quite close with you. So that's a really nice one to do as well. There's loads of stuff you can do with scent work, but the easiest thing is literally, I've got a bit of food, I'm going to hide it, and you're going to go and find it, and teaching them from there. You might need to have a little bit of input to start with. Some dogs, if you hide food, they're literally like, I don't understand. So you need to teach them, find it means go and find the food. But that can be a really nice thing to start with as well. Has that answered your question? Actually, let me know if that's answered your question. If anyone else has got any, just pop them in, and I'll have a chat about it as well. I wanted to talk about filming. So you can go into this in loads of detail, but I was really briefly just going to say that a good thing to do is when you're leaving your dog, even if you think your dog is absolutely fine, I would still film them, because I think filming, it would just give you a little bit of peace of mind. So you can use your phone, you can use an app, there are tons of things you can use, but just prop it up, go out, for 20 minutes, not for too long. And then what you can do is just see what they do. And again, I'm just going back to that, what's normal for them. So, if you might have a dog that's quite active and they get up and they move around and they flump down and that's fine, because that might just be what they're doing. And you might get other dogs that just completely conk out, which I think is what my dog does. So I think you need to know what's normal for them, but filming them is going to give you that baseline. And if you see any worries about, pacing around the floor, ripping anything up, just not being able to settle, sort of really staring out of the window, barking, anything like that, that you've got something going on there that you can really start working on straight away. So even if you're watching this, I film mine every so often just to check that he's okay, but it's a useful thing to have. And it's useful to have as a baseline as well, because you know how they're feeling if anything ever came up in the future as well. I also want you to think about where you leave your dog. So this is just more of a general thing for separation, but where are you leaving them? Because some dogs, you know, some dogs like being as part of the family home, and they like being in the kitchen, or, you know, where you all are, and then you go out and you leave them in the utility room, and they're just not used to being in there. And also to think about the lockdown, people have done a lot of home interiors and design and decorating, and you might think, oh, I've made this amazing place for my dog to stay when I go out, but you just want to make sure they're happy with that, because, you know, obviously you don't want to just put them somewhere and think that's great because it's, you know, it's really cushioned and they've got this beautiful den and I've you know, made it really comfortable for them. But if they don't enjoy being there, then they're not going to like being left. So I would just look at where do they choose to sleep, where are they most rested in the day. You know, if you're using a crate, do they like, you know, are they one of those dogs that actually likes to go in their crate and they go in and they choose to sleep in there? Because that's just going to give you a bit of food for thought when you're trying to think about where to leave them. So I would think about where you're actually going to leave them as well. Has anyone got any questions? I'll give you a minute. Sorry, I feel like I'm trying to get everything out there to you, so you've got things that you can do and go and plan. But pop your questions below. I've got a few more things I want to talk about. Then what I'll do is I'll make sure I answer any other questions that come up. And then we will probably wrap it up. So yeah, if anyone's got any questions, any comments, anything at all. Is anyone watching this? If any of you've got a dog with a separation problem, just let me know. Or are you kind of watching it more for general overview? Let me know in the comments, because it's always nice to see what people are feeling when they're watching it, and if there's stuff that they need to know when you're watching as well. So yeah, just drop a comment. That would be great. I wanted to talk about routines. So obviously if you've been in lockdown, you've been, you know, working from home, your routine is probably going to be completely different. So even if you keep your working hours the same and you still start at 9 and you still finish at 5, you're not doing the same as what you normally did. So what I want you to think about is what was your routine before lockdown, and how has your routine changed, and is that going to impact your dog when you go back to work? Because Becky says, oh, you say thank you, perfect, and then Becky says, yep, separation dog. I hope it's helpful, Becky, but let me know if you need any extra help, and I will make sure I answer it. So yes, routine. So I would just look at how you can start incorporating your routine a little bit more before you go back to work, because what you don't want is to wake up one day and go, right, I'm going to put on all my work suit and all of my work clothes, and I'm going to just go to work. Because dogs pick up on everything we do. They're reading everything we do all the time. And if they start to learn that, they will know that it's different. So I would just look at, you know, school run, for example. Some children haven't been going to school, and that's different. So just look at what your routine is and how you can start to tweak that in, and how you can start to bring that in. For example, you might just get up at a different time. You might get up, you know, you might have to get up if you're anything like my other half, who has to get up, you know, at about 5:30 in the morning to go to work, and he's not having to do that when he's working from home. You might want to just look at what time you're waking up, and you know, is their routine different? Are you taking them for a massive long walk in the mornings now? And actually when you go back to work, you're not going to have time to do that. So what I want you to do is think about, okay, when I go back, how can I start to ease in my routine gradually, so it's not just suddenly straight back in there? Because I think that's an important thing after lockdown that maybe we don't always consider. Claire says, any advice for a puppy that holds onto hands when owners are going to leave the house? I assume from that, so from puppy, so Claire, is it that your puppy is quite young, so under about 5 months, and they're puppy biting, or is it that you've literally got a puppy that doesn't like to be left? Because I think that's really, there's difference in definition there. If that is a really good signal, actually, if you've got a dog that tries to stop you from leaving. I've worked with dogs before that have been aggressive, and actually when you look at it, they just don't want to be left alone. So yeah, I would definitely look at if that's trying to stop you from leaving it. And if they are trying to bite onto you when you leave the house, then it's probably a separation issue. What I would probably do is go through all of this, because I think this will be really useful. because if they're literally trying to block you, I don't want you to leave the house, then yeah, I would say there's probably some sort of issue there, whatever, you know, a separation issue. So yeah, go through all of this and let me know. So, oh, Claire says 5 months old and holds onto hands. And is that only when you leave the house, or does that happen at other times? But let me know if it's literally they're fine every other time and they bite onto you when you're trying to leave, then I would go through all of this and I would work through trying to make them feel much more comfortable about being left. If it's worse then, but they're doing it anyway, then I would maybe look at puppy biting. And what I can do is afterwards I can put a little link in the comments of a video that might help. So let me know. Good, we're having some comments come in. So Sonia said, oh hi Sonia, says I had to move Benji to leaving him in the bedroom as he got spooked by a firework in the conservatory. So that's a really good point. Dogs can obviously get scared of being left alone if something scary happens. Use a Kong to distract him when you leave. He's been crying once, that's gone. Yeah, what I would do is I would set up some situations where you give him his Kong and you leave, but you maybe come back before he's finished it. So he's not thinking the Kong means he's not learning to finish the Kong and then get anxious. So I would start to teach him that the Kong goes down, you're going to pop out, but you're going to come back in, and you keep it quite casual. You don't want to be like, I'm back, you just come back in. Yeah, that's what I would start to do is make the time a lot shorter and build it up really slowly, because what you don't want is for the Kong to signify that you're leaving and then for him to always feel anxious about going. I mean, it's good that he's eating because some dogs don't eat, but I think if he's crying then he's probably got something going on there. So yeah, if you can shorten the time, that would be great. Yeah, I think that'd be the best thing to do for him. That was a good question though, well done. You made me think of something I wanted to talk about. Who else have I got? I've got Lucy. Hi Lucy. 2 brothers at 14 and a half years old. Oh, lovely. One has separation issues. It's better with longer walks in the morning, but obviously in the summer it's harder to be inside with the heat. So you can't leave Kongs happily as the other one gets dominant, or I assume tries to steal them. So I would say that, so he's better with longer walks in the morning. So I'm assuming that he sleeps, he's more tired, so he sleeps more when he's got longer walks. Yeah, a lot of people leave food, and I think leaving food can be a good thing because obviously it breaks that contrast. So when you leave, they're not staring after you, so it can break that contrast, and it can make them feel calmer if they've got something to eat. But I think if there's a real issue, the food either masks the problem or it doesn't do anything. So I wouldn't worry if you can't leave Kongs down. I wouldn't really worry, because I don't think that's going to solve the issue. It really depends on what he's doing when you leave him and how long you're leaving him for. But I would probably say if he's got a separation issue, any dog has got a separation issue, I would say for him, go back to the point at which he's happy to be left, and then I would look at, okay, can I do some work there? So if he's happy, you can leave him. He's happy to stay in the house. It's literally just when you leave the house, then I would start to make really, really small leave for a really small amount of time and come back in before he starts to get anxious. So I would look at that, making it really small. And also maybe look at, you know, he's older. Is he comfortable? Has he got, I mean, I assume you're doing this anyway, but is he comfortable? He's got something nice to lay on. If he gets hot, has he got somewhere cool to go? Which room are you leaving him in? What do you do before you leave? Does he start to show signs before you leave? Is there anything you can start to do to make him feel more comfortable about when you leave? If you can't use, you know, could part of it be that when you left and you've left Kongs down, the other one starts to get a bit grumpy about it, so then he's starting to feel anxious about that. So I would look at all of these, look at exactly what it is, look at the root cause, exactly why you think he's worried about it. And he's older as well. I mean, I would probably say for anyone, I just want to put, for anyone that has got an issue, anything we come on as a Q&A, we will always say you need to get a vet referral. So you always need to check it, and especially, so if you think your dog's got a separation issue, you always need to check it with the vet. So, and if that's any issue, you check it with the vet. But especially with him, if he's 14 and a half, could there be something going on to do with age? Could there be some sort of you know, decline there, or just something going on. So I would maybe just chat with the vet and just see if there's anything extra that could be accounting for it, just to make sure we rule everything out. But I hope that helps. I hope that gives you a little bit of something to think of. Jodie says, oh, I just lost it. There we go. Jodie says, previous separation, he's coped well, but managed to do lots of stuff you've done during lockdown since the start, and he's managed really well. That's perfect. Well done, Jodie. I'm so pleased with that. That's great. It's hard because lockdown has given us a really good time to do it, but again, lockdown has been really busy for some people, but it's amazing you've been able to do that. So a massive well done. That's great. Thank you for commenting and letting us know, because it can be done. Oh, Claire says at other times too. Okay, Claire, so if your puppy is mouthing at other times, I'll put a link so you can maybe look at trying to work through the puppy biting issues, because I know that that's really hard when you've got a 5-month-old and they're biting you. And it might just be when you're leaving the house, it's just really exciting, and putting your clothes on and putting your coat on is just something fun to bite. So it could be that. I mean, it could be a separation issue, but I would film. If you think if you've got any doubt of it being a separation issue, just film it and just see what your puppy does when you leave. If when you leave they go, all right, I'll go to sleep, then it's more of a puppy biting issue. If when you leave they're really hyped up and they're doing behaviours that show that they're, you know, not feeling great, then you can look at it that way. Becky says, I'm an ABTC registered trainer. Brilliant. And I took on a client's dog because they couldn't cope with severe separation anxiety. So severe is really difficult, so I feel for you. Destruction is hit and miss, sometimes fine, sometimes as soon as I leave. Desensitization is not helping. It's a tricky one. Yeah, it is. Do you know what? The problem with separation is that there has to be a really good plan, and I think so much needs to be done even before you start desensitizing them. So I think a lot needs to be done on relationship and attachment, and if you've just taken on this poor dog, is, you know, you might not have done, but it sounds like you took him on because of a separation issue, and if he's got a separation issue anyway and then he's been rehomed to you, you know, that attachment is, he's been, you know, attached to some people and then that's been broken, and the poor thing is probably just so I think with separation issues, so much needs to be done on actually the attachment between the owner and the dog, and also, you know, literally what they're like within the room, within the house. I think there's a lot of work that can be done. So if you're struggling with desensitization, it depends on whether you're struggling with the desensitization because you're stuck, or whether you literally cannot get to the point where he's okay. So you can always, as always, you can message any of us if anyone needs any help. But yeah, it sounds really tricky. So, and again, you can speak to the vet, see if there's anything, any supplements, anything that might help. I would speak to the vet if it's really severe, because some dogs do need a little bit of extra help. So, but yeah, keep me updated that one because it sounds really interesting. Claire says, thank you. That's great. I'm pleased it helped, but let me know, put in the comments if anyone needs any extra help. Sonia says, thank you. Oh, Becky, I've just seen the second part of your message. You're still struggling. Yeah, with the desensitization. Just comment and update us and let us know, because I would love to know how you get on. But it really depends on what point of the desensitization you're struggling with, because if it's just, it depends on whether you're stuck, and it depends on whether it's what you're doing, whether he can't cope. So yeah, let us know. Becky says, thanks, that's excellent, perfect. And then Lucy says, it's been worse since lockdown, since you've been home more. He's more vocal after you're outside for a session away from him. Generally, he's much more improved since we moved to a quiet property. Okay, so it could be that before it was all the sort of stimulation and everything that was causing it. And we reduced issues around people and noise. So it sounds like he had a few things going on, bless him. So all of this can feed in. If they're stressed, then that's going to make any issue worse. And high, you know, high stress is going to just make problems with separation. They're going to find it more difficult to relax in general. So we just sorry, I lost the place then. We'd filmed with a behaviourist a few years ago, and he has pain meds for back issues identified by bed moving in that original consultation. Okay, I think, Lucy, let me just go back to your original message. Okay, so I think with him, I think there's probably a few things that you've obviously dealt with really well, and you're obviously on top of it. You know, you've got behaviourists working with you, which is great. So I think there's probably a few things going on. Have you recently moved? Oh no, it's since lockdown you've been home more. Okay, and then he's more vocal after you've been outside for a session away from him. Yeah, I think it sounds like for me, from your comment, it sounds like he's generally getting there and he's generally doing quite well, but you're just getting stuck on these small things. So I would just, again, I would go, you know, if he's got pain going on, if he's always been quite overstimulated and reactive, I would maybe look at, can you do some more calm, sort of settled behaviours, if it's just that he's finding it hard to relax. And I would go back to that point where he can't cope. And you might find that once you've left him, once you do one thing and it spikes all that stress, basically, they're more likely to be stressed afterwards. So if you find you leave him in the morning and then you need to leave him in the afternoon, he's probably going to be worse in the afternoon because he's already had to cope with kind of the stress of being left in the morning. So I would maybe say, go back to that stage of where he's happy. It looks like you've moved all his bed and stuff, which is perfect. And maybe look at just some general kind of settled, relaxed, calm training. He's 14 and a half, doesn't mean you can't train him, but anything, or just trying to take that sort of stress away and keep him nice and relaxed. And of course it's going to be worse after lockdown because he's going to be more attached to you. So if you can start to do some separations within the house, then I would look at that as well and just go back to that as a starting point as well. I hope that's helped. I hope that's given you some things to think about. I think that's all of the comments. So what I'll probably do is I will probably start to wrap it up there, because I feel like I've spoken about a lot and there's probably a lot to digest. So if anyone's got any last comments, of course put them in. Oh, Lucy says you'll do shorter and varied leaving before I need to go back to longer days. They've multi-room access. Should I reduce or leave multi-room? It really depends on his preference. It's really hard to say. It's so hard to give advice during these things because you just don't know. Yeah, it depends. It really depends on the dog. It depends on, I think, if you suddenly restrict. So the thing to think about is if you suddenly restrict access, is that going to make him stressed because he can't then access the place he was able to go? Or if he's got multi-room access, is he worse because he's looking out of the windows and he's reacting to things outside of the house? So they're the things that I probably think about with him. Oh, sorry, I've got one more comment. I'm going to do this comment with Zoe, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to start wrapping it up. So we've got Zoe. So Zoe says she's got an 8-year-old rescue dog. You've had him for 4 years. He's very anxious when you got him, but he's much happier now. So that's great. Well done. I've upped his enrichment and shoes. His routine hasn't changed too much, and neither is yours because you're still working. Perfect. So, and your brother's been off school. He's crate trained as a pup. So that's his safe space. So that's really good. And he goes in it when he goes out. He loves food, and we'll go in the crate and we'll manage 20 minutes. I think he starts to get bored and then starts to vocalise. During the sessions away from him, doing the sessions away from him are quite hard at the moment. Planning on moving my partner and back to basics. Yeah, so I would probably say, it's a really good point to say, is it boredom? Because with all separate, so the reason we call it, so the reason I call it, you want to call it separation problems because there are lots of reasons that dogs can do something when they're on their own. And I think boredom can be one of them. So it could be that he's bored. And is he happy? I would say, is he happy being shut in his crate when you're in the house? Because it could just be that he just doesn't want to be shut in. So I'd look at what he does if you're in the house and you shut him in, and do it with food, but I'd look at what he does then, because that will be a good test to see whether it's, oh, I don't want to be shut in this crate, or whether it's something else. And I would probably say, I can imagine sessions away from her really tricky. I'd probably start in the house and just, you know, if he's used to being in the crate. The tricky thing is, sometimes they get a bit frustrated because they're like, well, why am I in the crate when you're in the house? So you've got to balance that. But I would maybe look at potentially just shutting him in the crate when you're in there, and maybe, but when you're in another room. So maybe not when you're in the same room, because I think when you're in the same room, that's when you'll get the frustration. So shut him in, go around the house, you know, go into another room, do what you can do, and see, and is it the same reaction as when you leave him? Because if it's boredom and frustration, it'll be similar, whereas if it's separation, it might look a little bit different. So I would film the two, and then you can compare the two. And I'd probably look at, you know, if he can cope with 20 minutes, then just work with 20 minutes. So just say, okay, I know he can cope with 20 minutes. We're going to work with that and make sure he's really happy with that. And then we'll really slowly start to eke it out. So we'll slowly start to add in a few minutes. So we'll say 20 minutes. And then even if you say, I'm going to do 21 minutes or 23 minutes, you know, you've got to go at what level he can cope with, but then you really slowly start to build it. That's what I'd probably do, is start with his out. And then he said, when you're moving in with your partner next year, you're going back to basics. So you kind of what you'll be able to do is when you're moving in, obviously moving in is a trigger time, because they're moving house, they're moving environment, everything's different. But what you could do is almost start fresh. So, you know, how are you going to set him up? Where are you going to leave him? Are you going to use the crate? Is there a different option? You know, you can go through all of these things. So, yeah, I think you're doing a good job. I'm also planning on doing calm settles and separations. Yeah, do you know what? You sound like you're doing the right stuff. So it sounds like you're really thinking about everything, which is great. So yeah, I think what you want to do is really diagnose the root cause of why he's barking. One thing you could do, I'm just thinking, if it's boredom, is he better or worse when he's had a really, really busy day? So if he's like been on a massive long walk, he's been around, you know, your family, he's been really having a great time, and you know he's tired, if you leave him then, what does he do? Because that can be a good test to see, is it boredom or is it something else? It's not fail-safe, but it might just give you a little bit more. All of these things are about you, everyone building up the picture. So you want to just be going, okay, well, this happens, this happens, this happens. So the general picture is this, and that's what we do in behaviour, basically. So anyway, Zoe, I hope that helps. Let me know if that's useful, but it sounds like you're on the right direction, just looking at a few things to do there. So I think what I'll do is I'll wrap it up there for everyone. So we've had loads of people come on, which has been amazing. So it's always really lovely. I know there's so many lives and so much going on. So it's nice to have you all with us. So thank you so much. Again, with the comments, it's hard to answer and to kind of give any personal recommend. I can give you things to think about, but it's really hard to actually give you advice personally, because obviously we don't know the dog at all. If anyone is struggling, or if anyone's watching this and they're struggling, then I would definitely say contact one of the APBC. So obviously you're on our page, you can go to the website, you can type in where you are. I know that everything's a little bit different because of the restrictions, but definitely what I would say is just type in your area, because a lot of the members are doing things remotely, which has been amazing. And I would say as well, for separation is one of those things that you can do remotely. So you can definitely get some help if anyone's struggling. If anyone has thought, oh, I need some help, just contact one of us. You know, the APBC are really, they're high standards and they really want to help. So definitely get in contact. If you want to, you can go on my page, which is Lead with Lauren, and you can follow. There's a few videos there that I've been doing just to try and help the lockdown dogs and the lockdown puppies separation. So of course you can go there. But any behaviour help, then of course go to the APBC. So I'm just going to make sure. Oh, thanks Claire, that's great. Oh, thanks Zoe. What I'll do is I'll come back and check the comments. Probably I'll check it later today, but I'll also check tomorrow. So if anyone's watching us on the replay, if you've got anything that you want to say, then just obviously put them in the comments and I will make sure I check. So thank you so much, everyone. Thank you for watching. It's been lovely having you, and see you all soon.